Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about the outlines of the boards and how different outlines have different effects on the characteristics of the board. We talked about it yesterday. So I got two different boards here. This is the 9.6 Nalu. It's 9.6 by 30. This one's been a real popular model, kind of a good all-round board. And then this is our new 9.4 Fun Stick, 9.4 by 33. So this one is a wider board. But as you can see, this one has a kind of a more pulled-in nose versus this has like a wider, fuller nose. So by keeping the nose wider and fuller, we get more of a straighter outline on the sides, which makes the board glide a little bit better for its length. Like, so even though this board is only 9.6, it still has a pretty good amount of glide. And this one doesn't have that really wide longboard tail. It has kind of a narrower pintail. So it still turns well off the tail, but it has a fuller, wider nose. So it keeps the outline more straight, which is good for cruising and so on. One of the downsides of the wider nose is, you know, if you're surfing and you're pulling into a turn, that wider nose kind of catches a little bit easier. The rail kind of catches easier, so it's harder to do like the real fast, speedy bottom turns. And another disadvantage is also like when you're going out through the surf, through whitewater, that bigger nose kind of catches more. The whitewater pushes you back more. Versus a more pointy nose, you kind of punch through the whitewater easier as you're going out. Also, when it's windy and choppy, the pointy nose tends to catch less of that chop. Like this one, because it's so wide, when the choppy waves hit the bottom, it kind of creates a lot of extra, kind of pushes more water and hits the chop a little bit more than a more pointy nose. So those are some of the differences between the pointy nose and the round nose. You know, there's not one or the other that's better. It depends on the conditions. Always, like everything it's always a compromise. You know, one thing's going to be better and another thing's going to be not as good. So you just want to find a board that works well for you. Okay, so these are the two boards that are nice, kind of average sized boards. For someone that doesn't want a real big board but still wants nice stability and good all-around usage, these the 9.4 and the 9.6 are great models. And the colorways are, this is the yellow with the yellow camo deck pad, and then this is the pink rock, we call this one. So those are, and all our colorways are available in all the different models. You can check online. We have on our website. We have the color availability, what we have in stock, posted online, so you can always check what the latest stock is. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the fins on the Blue Planet boards. These are the fins it comes with. These are injection molded future side fins and the center fin. So these are strong, durable fins, and these are the recommended fins for the boards. Now, even though the boards come with 5 fins, you don't want to use all 5 fins at once. It gives you too much fin area. So I'm going to show you a little bit the different options that you have with the fins. And you know, it's definitely good to play around with the fin setup because it'll change the characteristics of the board. You know, so depending on especially how much fin area you have on the board, makes the board either track better or be more drivey, versus a smaller fin area will make it turn easier and make the board more loose and kind of a little bit sliding out in turns and so on. We also have upgrades for our fins. These ones here are the honeycomb fins, which are like a more high-tech material. It's like a lighter weight fiberglass. It has these holes cut out to save weight. So these are the side fins. Usually the front fins are a little bit bigger than the back fins. So this is how that fin setup looks like. And so these are more, like an upgrade fin. These ones also have an inside foil, which kind of gives you extra drive in the turn. It kind of accelerates you through the turn better. So, and those are optional. But I'm going to show you how to set up the standard fins. So first of all, the center fin is, the screw is already in the board usually. There's a screw and a plate inside the board that you need a Phillips head screwdriver for. You can pull the screw in the plate out like this. So this is the basic screw and plate. So the plate drops into the box and kind of slides forward. And then the fin itself has this little tab in the back that you slide into the box. You slide it back, a good position to start with. The fin is about in the middle of the box, but by moving it forward, it'll make the board a little bit more loose. By moving it back, it gives you better tracking. So depending on what you want, you can move the fin forward or backward. So you put the fin in, and then I like to use this fin key to slide the plate right underneath the hole so that it's aligned, and then you can put the screw in and it'll go right into the plate. So this is just a single fin setup, and this is actually kind of a fun way to surf. It gives you more speed, it has less drag, especially if you're paddling in flat water. And that's all you're doing, then just use the center fin. Don't use the side fins, because that'll add more drag to the board and not necessarily help you that much with tracking, because the side fins are also slightly angled in. They're kind of a little bit angled in towards the nose of the board, so that actually creates more drag. And the idea for these side fins is that they give you better turnability, so they give you more grab in the turns, versus just a single fin will be a little bit faster. Okay, so now we're going to put in these side fins, and there's the two front fins are a little bit bigger than the ones that go in the back boxes, and then also the depth of the fin box is a little bit different. The back boxes are a little bit more shallow because they're usually closer to the deck of the board, so they don't go as deep. So there's two different depths of the fin, so you can't put the back fins in the front box. You can only use these ones in the front boxes. So right now we're going to set it up as a 2+1. This is called 2 in the front and 1 in the middle. So you slide the side fins in, so the back goes in the notch, and then you push the front down to go in, and then you can use that fin key, and you might have to back out the fin screw a little bit to make sure that it's not in the way of the fin when you put it in. And then you just screw this down, tighten the side fins down. You don't want to over tighten it, just enough so it's hand tight and maybe another quarter turn more. If you over tighten it, you can actually strip out the screw, and it's something that can be repaired, but it's kind of not an easy repair. So you don't want to over tighten these screws. So this is a 2+1 setup. This is a nice surfing setup. Gives you kind of a bigger fin area, so good tracking, good drive, good stability. And then if you want to loosen up the setup a little bit, you can take out the center fin. Like, you don't want to use like I said, you don't want to use all 5 fins at once. It's just too much fin area, too much drag, and it's really going to make the board stiff if you try to use all 5 fins together. And I've seen people do that, but it's not recommended. So you can take out the center fin and then put these two side fins, the two back fins in, and screw them down. And then this is the quad fin setup. So this, with the quad fin setup, it makes the board a little bit more loose. So only the boards that are 10 feet or short, 10 foot 6 inches or shorter in our line have this 5 fin setup. The ones bigger than 10.6 only have 3 fins, so you can set up as a single fin or 2+1, but not really a quad. A quad is more like for turning really off the tail. If you get your foot all the way back on the tail, you can kind of, on the cutback, slide the tail, and it kind of lets you slide the tail out and have a more looser feeling of the board. So it really kind of, you can complete your turns easier and kind of bring the board all the way around. And then one of the downsides is, though, it's not quite as drivey. So like on the bottom turn, if you're coming off the bottom, you push really hard on the tail, it can kind of slip out a little bit. So you have to be a little bit more, you can't push as hard on the board in the bottom turn. So that's what I call drivey, is when like a 2+1 is usually more drivey. So you can really push on that tail hard, and it won't really slide out. It'll give you a lot of drive off the bottom. But then when you come off the top with the bigger center fin, it just doesn't have that loose, slidey feeling. So it's good to play around, and also different sizes. Like even a quad fin setup like this can be different than one with this one is slightly smaller, and then having different fin shapes, everything. So there's a lot of differences in the fin. So just because you don't like the board on the first try, try it with different fins. It'll really make the board behave differently. So we recommend playing around with your fins a little bit. Most people don't. Most people put the fin setup it comes with on the board, and never play around with it. But we recommend that just play around with the fin setup. It really makes a difference, especially in the surf if you go surf with it. Okay, so I'm gonna just put on these different fins to compare a little bit the size. Like these ones are fairly close in size. Another thing I didn't mention earlier is like the front fins have the inside flat. It's just foiled on the outside only. So the flat side always faces towards the inside of the board. And then the back fins have a foil on both sides. So really depending on which fins, you always want to make sure you put the right fin in the front and the back, so they're not really interchangeable. But this fin setup here is a little bit smaller, so less fin area makes the board look more loose, and then there's a bigger difference too between the front fin and the back fin. Like this is this front fin is fairly similar to that size, but this is quite a bit smaller. So by using a fin setup like this, it will make the board more loose and turn easier. And then there's different fin shapes, of course, too. So you can play around with that. Like more, if the fin is more straight up and down, it'll kind of be more pivoty. It'll be easier to pivot it. Where these ones kind of give you a little bit more flex in the turn, and then they kind of release nicely. So it's good. Like I said, it's good to play around, and the good quality fins aren't cheap. So not necessarily a cheap thing to do, play around with the fins, but it really can make a difference in how the board behaves. Can sometimes make a good board, excellent board, or a bad board, a decent board, just to have good fins on it. Yeah.
Are there certain size waves that it's at an advantage to ride a quad versus riding 3 fins?
Okay, so in terms of wave size, there's not really a set rule for the fins, like using a quad in bigger waves or smaller waves. I personally kind of like the quads better in smaller waves, maybe up to head high, where I want it to be turning really tight. On a bigger wave, I like kind of more the drive and the bottom turning of a thruster or 2+1 setup. And then the size of the fins in bigger waves, you want more fin size. In smaller waves, you can get away with less fin and more loose surfing. So it really depends on the wave size, and then also the width of the tail. Like if your tail is super wide, you want more fin area than on a real narrow tail. So on a narrower tail, you can get away with less fin area than on a really wide tail, just the way it works. Like for some reason, the really wide tails need more fin area. So you kind of want to look at that too, with the size of your board and your weight. A bigger guy with more power, more weight needs bigger fins than a really lightweight small person. So like kids will use really small fins, and big fins will just make their boards too stiff and they won't be able to turn it right. So those are some things to consider when you're choosing the fins.
Do you actually change out your fins once the waves hit a certain size on the same board, or no? You just change.
Yeah. So if I'm I will kind of choose the board and fins depending on the conditions, but usually if you have a bunch of boards to choose from, like we have a whole quiver of rental boards here, so usually for bigger waves I'll choose a different board with a different fin setup than for smaller waves. So I won't necessarily always switch the fins around, but I just have like different boards that are set up for different kinds of conditions that I prefer using, like certain, a board with a wider tail and a wider board for sloppy surf helps, like less rocker, kind of more speed and wider, like our potato chip model that we can talk about a little bit too. That's a good board for like not super powerful surf. But then if it gets steep and fast and powerful, bigger waves, then it's nice to have a narrower tail that kind of can bite into the wave, and a thinner tail too, less, thinner rails, and a narrower board will be faster and more speedy. And also a little bit more length is good when you're riding bigger waves. So shorter boards are good for the smaller waves where you have like you want to be turning really tight in the pocket. If you got like a big wave with long drawn out bottom turns, a longer board will work better. All right, so I just wanted to show this board real quick. This is a new model that we have for 2014. We call it the potato chip model. It's 8.6 by 32 by 3 3/4 thick by 123 liters in volume. So even though it's only 8.6, pretty short, it's got a pretty wide outline, 32 inches. It's very stable, and the nose is fairly wide, and the tail is really wide too. So So it's actually, even though it's 8.6 long, it's a very stable board. Like for someone, especially like I'm used to riding more like 29-inch wide boards. So for me, this is really a really stable board, and it's easy to get speed on it. It's easy to catch the waves on it because it's fairly flat rocker in the bottom. Not like in the tail, it's pretty flat. It doesn't have a lot of kick in it. So just that helps in the wide surface area. Helps to get on a plane real easily. It's easy to catch the wave. It has a fairly straight outline. So it's you can catch the wave early, which is really unusual for 8.6. Usually 8.6 kind of drags through the water, and you have to drop in at the very last moment. This one's kind of more like a longer board where you can just kind of glide into it from earlier, further out. So, and you can set it up as a quad, twin fin, 2+1 thruster, whatever.
So what is the maximum weight rider that you ride this?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about board volume, because that's a question we get a lot. So on the sides of our boards now, all our new boards have, the volume printed along with the dimensions, the length, the width, the thickness, and then the volume. So this one is 123 liters, and 123 liters is basically, that means 123 kilograms, because 1 liter of water weighs 1 kilogram. So when the board displaces 1 kilogram of water, it creates 1 kilogram of lift. So if you're 123 kilograms, the board will just exactly float you. It'll basically, you'll sink the board all the way underwater, but it'll still it'll float you. So ideally, for very good expert riders, they ride boards that are right on the border of where they barely float them. Basically, they're standing with their feet almost underwater, and the board just has just enough volume to float them. For the average rider, we recommend getting at least double the volume, so the board's maybe halfway underwater when you're on it. You don't want it to be like almost sinking. It makes it very hard to, unless you're moving around on the board and paddling and creating dynamic lift, just the volume of the board, you want to be able to comfortably float on it. So 2.2 pounds is 1 kilo. So to make this into pounds, 123 liters times 2.2. Let's figure that one out. This board is 123 liters times 2.2, so that's 270 pounds. So it would take 270 pounds of weight to sink this board. That means an expert rider let's say 250 pounds can ride this board and be okay on it. But for someone that's not an expert, we recommend having about twice the volume that you need. So this one is 270 times 0.5. That's maybe 140 pounds. So for an entry-level person, beginner, 140 pounds is kind of the maximum weight you would want to be to have a board this size. So and that's roughly, and you can go somewhere in between there, if you have good balance and stuff. But when you're starting out, that's kind of a good guideline. And maybe you can even look at the liters and have, about that number in pounds is kind of a good, like if you're 200 pounds, maybe a 200 liter board to start out with is a good volume.
How much do you weigh, and can you ride that board?
Okay, so I'm 195 pounds or so, give and take, and I'm comfortable on this board. I've been doing it, paddling for like 7 years or so now. So I've been paddling for a long time, and for me, this board is super stable. It's a board I can use when it gets windy, choppy, rough. I'm very comfortable on this board. Like I'll ride boards like this, maybe 28 and 20 or 29 inches wide, and then at that point it gets pretty tippy, and if the volume is lower too. But this for me is a comfortable board to ride.
Do you ride it up to a certain size wave or no?
Yeah, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the shape. This is kind of a Simmons inspired shape, real wide, and like I said, good for catching the wave early and generating speed on a wave that's not as powerful. So this board, I like to use it when the conditions are less than ideal. Like, if I go to the North Shore, it's going to be pumping, juicy, steep, fast waves. Then this is not the board I would take. I would take this like on a day when the surf is kind of mediocre. It can be head high or even overhead high, but if the waves are kind of slopey and they're not like barreling or really steep and hollow, then this is a fun board because you can generate more speed. You can make it around sections. You can, it has that kind of the slidey tail. You can get on the tail and kind of slide it out, which is fun. And then the rails are pretty tapered. It's very thin rails, actually. We don't use the S rails because I don't like the way it kind of raises your feet and makes the rail so thin that you have no volume in the rails. But these rails work really well. So I like it for up to head high, maybe a little bit over head high waves, as long as they're not too steep. But once the waves get really steep and bigger, I like to be on a narrower board just for speed too. Like a narrower board will give you more speed, and it's also easier to go from rail to rail. Like a wider board, you kind of have to move your feet around a little bit to go from the inside rail to the outside rail. So to switch rails, you have to kind of move your feet a little bit just to get from one rail to the other. On a narrower board, you can kind of plant your feet sometimes and just stay in that position from rail to rail. All right, so by making our own boards, our own designs, and going directly from the factory to our shop, we're able to offer a really good price for our boards. So you get everything here. Great construction with the bamboo veneer, vacuum bag construction. It's light and strong. You got the deck pad, easy to carry handle. A two-way vent plug, self-venting plug, GoPro mount in the front, 2 leash plugs. The board's over 10 feet. Also have 4 tie-down spots on the deck. And all boards 10-6 or smaller have 5 fin boxes, and they come with the 5 fins included, and also they come with a free padded board bag. So all that is included in the price. This is the 8.6 model. It's at $1,099, $1,099. And if you live on the mainland, you order this on our website, we include free shipping to the nearest airport. So you can get free air cargo shipping by Delta Air Cargo. You just have to go to the nearest airport and pick it up. All of that's included. If you buy it at our shop, we have an in-store special. You also get a carbon paddle. So instead of that free shipping offer, you can get the free carbon paddle. So it's either a fixed length carbon paddle like this with oval shaft, real comfortable, lightweight, and it's glued to the right length. So if you let us know what size, we'll cut and glue it for you, size and glue it for you. And then you can also choose an adjustable carbon paddle like this. Has a nice clip adjustment system. Also nice and lightweight. Really good blade with a nice dihedral on it. Very efficient, easy to use blade. And you get the free padded paddle bag, like a shoulder bag that you can use to protect your paddle. And you also get a free Blue Planet leash and an instructional DVD. So all that's included if you buy the board in our shop. It's our in-store special. Really hard to beat that deal, and the boards hold their value really well. So if you want to sell it and get another board later on, you can sell it used and get probably close to what you paid for it. All right, thanks for watching.